What's going on, you loyal listeners? Thank you for tuning in to the L Squared podcast. I'm your host here, Luke Larson, and joining me today, as per the unusual, my lovely and loquacious special guest who will be assisting me in leisurely launching you into levity, friend of the show, my old buddy, Nate Dio Double Dizzle.
How about that for an intro? Thanks, buddy. Making my
welcome.
podcast debut today.
What?
Let's see how she goes.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. And for the loyal listeners to key you in, Nate and I have been friends for a very long time. And he's a bit of a Marvel expert at this point. Because you've seen every MCU product?
I've seen all the movies and the shows probably at least once, most of them a couple of times. I'm in the MCU universe is more my area. I don't know the comics too well. I can't dive into that whole thing, but I'm excited to see where this goes today.
Well, I'll try not to ask you about that. And it's fun for me because, as the loyal listeners know, old legs will not come anywhere near Marvel movies and superhero movies in general, but especially MCU movies. So it's always a treat for me. But we wanted to come on to talk about, so Marvel in 2021 has done it's kind of interesting because they sort of had this plan before COVID hit and before the pandemic hit that they were going to kind of restructure the way they did things going forward, as we saw with building up the movies for the Thanos arc, for Endgame, and that was going to be kind of like the big last Avengers movie that we now have grown accustomed to, as far as building up different phases, like these movies lead into one bigger movie, and they were just going to kind of go in a different direction, which is probably smart because we had a lot of years of movies coming out every it's about like every 6 months or so for a few years, and they were all good. At the very least, they were good, and anyway, it was good that they were like, we're going to put an end to it, because I think everybody was sort of like, we got so much of it that everybody got a little bit of a fatigue. And so they were going to switch up their plan. So their plan was then to partner with Disney's new streaming service at the time, Disney Plus. And they were going to start putting out some smaller, kind of like series-based stuff, and then I don't know, see where it goes. I don't know if they have like a whole plan, but that ended up working out really well, because then obviously, as we all know, COVID hit and the movie industry is still trying to figure out how to get back.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect storm how the timing worked for them.
It really was. And so the fact that they already had this plan and already had things in production almost ready to go worked out great. And we're here to discuss the first couple products that they put out for Disney Plus. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, before we get into it, you noted Marvel's kind of transitioning into a different way. They're moving away from the old phases and everything. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I think that's going to be great. But there's also, you can just tell there's going to be some growing pains in the fan base. It's going to be a challenge for some people. It'll be interesting to get into that as we talk today.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that for me, I love that. And I was excited about it just because, like, just to have like a palate cleanser and to just, try something different rather than just because some of the you'll inevitably get that with so many movies that have come out, and they get to be a little bit, some of the ones that aren't as unique tend to side a little bit boring. You see the formula of it, good guys always win, bad guys are always just paper thin.
You know what you're going to get, and it's going to be a fun change.
Yeah, so exactly.
It has been a fun change.
It has been. I agree, and I was ready for it. But you're right. Growing pains were definitely going to be there, and it would be. What I was really looking for. maybe I should turn this on you, but like, so what were kind of your expectations when you'd first heard about this new like kind of Disney Plus layout?
Well, I wasn't sure, to be honest. I didn't even know if I was going to get it. Like, I didn't know much about what the direction was. Like, they're going to start doing TV shows now, and do we have to watch them to stay involved in the MCU? Like, is this critical to the timeline? And you come to find out that, of course, it is. And the timing worked out for me that I ended up I needed a new cell phone. And like part of my new cell phone plan was I got 6 months of Disney Plus. And that was like right when Marvel stuff started coming out. Like, oh, of course, now I'm stuck now. I'm renewing it, and away we go. So I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no expectations, but I ended up with the Disney Plus subscription, and now there's no way I'm going to go back. I'm going to keep moving forward with it.
Yeah, I agree. I guess going into it, like Disney Plus as a whole, I was kind of like that too. I was like, I don't want another fucking streaming service. Like, I don't really care. Like, who cares?
There's so many, is this necessary?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
But I ended up getting it because, shout out Haley, my sister wanted to get it. And she was like, do you want to split it? It was like, all right. It's like, yeah, sure. I'll split it, and then, so that's what we do. And when it first rolled out, it was not good. Because it was not a good rollout. I don't know if people remember that, but it was like they did not have any like new content to really roll it out with, and they had a bunch of really obscure, odd, older Disney movies, like they're like that were like TV movies. I don't know. It was not a good look for them. They should have rolled it out with. Well, they rolled it out with The Mandalorian, right? Was that the first? Was that the first thing, or did it?
I'm not sure. I'm not well enough versed, honestly.
I don't remember I don't think
that was the first show I watched when I got it, though. I will say that.
Yeah, I think topic. That was the first show I did too, and I think that was what they rolled out with was The Mandalorian, but they didn't have anything else. So once The Mandalorian was done, kind of everybody was like, okay, but now like, what are we doing? And it was another 9 months before any of the Marvel stuff was really going to start.
I'll say too, when I did get it, just going back to not knowing what the expectations were, not just for Marvel, but Disney Plus in general, I didn't know that it was just going to be a library of everything Disney's ever done. You've got all the movies of Star Wars, and you got all the Marvel catalog. You can go back and watch whatever you want, whenever you want, plus the new content. I love it.
And honestly, like one selling point for me too was the old Disney Channel original movies from the Disney Channel, like that we grew up watching. You're like, I think
me and my wife sat down and watched, I think it was like the original Lion King when we first got it. It's like one of the first things we watched. Yeah, all the movies that we had the clamshell VHS tapes of as kids, you can go back and watch those. So going into the Marvel movies, I guess I was sort of like, we've all put in a lot of time and a lot of years and a lot of money into these Marvel movies, and so it was like when it worked out for me that it was like, I think the first Avengers came out the summer before my senior year of high school. So like basically my entire young adult life was like watching these movies, Yeah. I think since 2008, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. Like, so 2008, it was Iron Man. So I would have been in 8th grade. Yeah. So it's just like the perfect time for these to come out. For me especially, to grow up with them. But then like, as you get older and like, when I've gone out of college and stuff, you're enjoying it, but it was just sort of like, it felt like you're like, shit, another one's coming out. like damn, I gotta see another one, but you do, and so like when Infinity War was happening, I was like, all right, cool. I'm ready for Endgame. I'm ready for like the last big one.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of,
they built it up so well.
They did. And that Thanos arc was just incredible how they were able to do that. So like when it was done, it was like, okay, cool. That was a big part of my life. And, you know, I'm glad that it came to an end. I was ready for it to come to an end. I didn't want it to go any further like that. So yeah, with Disney Plus stuff, I was kind of with you where it's like, I don't even know if I'm gonna get Disney Plus, and like who really cares? Like, are they gonna keep doing it? And then there was all the talk of like people's contracts ending, and then are they gonna like reboot the whole thing? Or are they gonna, you know? So I guess I was sort of like, my thought process was like, if they're gonna do this new kind of platform, these new kind of mini series type, just like I was like, just take chances. You know, like I just want you to like be weird and like try stuff, you know, go out on a limb, because like all the Marvel movies, the reason they were so successful and they were all good is because a lot of them just played it safe. Like we said, there was a formula that worked. You knew what you're going to get out of them. And there weren't a lot of them that, the ones that like sort of broke the mold or reached a little bit, those were the ones I enjoyed more. So it's like, I just wanted to see more of that. Like you have a different platform. You're not necessarily going for like a big worldwide audience opening weekend. You know, it's a little bit different a model. So I was like, I just want to see these guys take chances.
Yep.
So to start us off, we're not going to go chronological order, but I thought we could start with talking about Black Widow, which is not a series, is a film.
This is the first film since Endgame.
Yeah.
Thought so.
Yep. First film since Endgame. And it came out simultaneously on Disney Plus and theatrically.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of well, I guess these were sort of my thoughts going into it. Black Widow was such a big character throughout the MCU, an important part. And she really, it felt like she sort of should have already had her own movie if they were going to give her own movie by now.
Yeah, she had earned that. You know, she's been around since I think Iron Man. Like
for sure, Iron Man 2.
Iron Man?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and she was, so she's been an integral part of it for most of the run. So it's sort of like she was sort of overdue for one. But I don't know. I guess what were your expectations going into Black Widow?
Well, obviously we know that it's a prequel into some timeline before Endgame. And
yeah, I guess I'll just say like we could talk about spoilers up to this point, like through Endgame. Because like if you haven't seen it, fuck you.
Yeah, get out of your hole.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's been years, like whatever. So the reason we know it's a prequel is because she dies in Endgame.
I was really excited and curious because, you know, they every once in a while in the films they give a glimpse, like a quick shout out to something in her past.
Yeah.
But you never know what she went through or what her story was.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool to kind of get that from being a young girl, really, of a child at the beginning of the movie, and then seeing how she got into that, like sort of, I don't know, maybe you call it like assassin and
mm-hmm.
like a very skilled killer, and just seeing that whole story develop, I thought was really interesting. I thought the movie itself was very good. It lived up to my expectations. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess going into it, I was just sort of like, this should have probably already happened now. But I thought the marketing kind of sucked for it. Like I thought, like, I don't know, I thought the trailers didn't really do a lot to help it, in my opinion. They weren't really working for me. So I was sort of like, it was another one where it's like, all right, I'll see it when I see it. And I did end up going to see it in theaters. And I'm actually really glad I went to see it in the theaters. I ended up liking it a lot more than I thought I would. If we want to talk about like specific things we like, I think the action in it is fantastic. And we'll talk about like some other action of recent Marvel stuff that I didn't think was great. But like, I thought it was so well done. I mean, just top to bottom, I was like, this is a very well directed action movie. Like the set pieces were really good. All the stunt work was really good. It was well filmed. It was paced really well. And I was like, I was I don't normally walk away from a movie saying like that was really good stunt work, but in this one I did. It really like stood out to me, you know.
Yeah, I think it was made very well as well. One thing I did want to say was it just given that it was more on the Earth scale, you know, we're not dealing with space and time and stuff like that.
Yeah, we've had plenty.
I almost got like a nostalgic feel, kind of going back to before they introduced all of that.
Yeah,
and it was really, it was like kind of a relief, but still a very, like you noted, a very well made film.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
Good point. We did spend the last couple years way out, intergalactic, big, huge universe battles. Yeah.
And you know, speaking of things like individually that we really liked, I thought, I don't remember her name, but Black Widow's sister just killed it.
Florence
that was
Pugh.
Perfect for me.
Oh,
she was incredible.
Florence Pugh is like maybe one of my favorite working actresses. I mean, she is just so good, and to have her potentially take over the mantle, you know, or in some capacity, is a great move by Marvel. And yeah, no, I totally agree. She pretty much stole the movie for me almost. One nerdy thing is that I straight up geeked out. Talk about old school, like nostalgic. I geeked out that freaking Taskmaster was in this movie. When they were pulling, I was like, oh, they got Taskmaster. Oh, I love Taskmaster. Now they made their own origin for him, but like Taskmaster, I always loved Taskmaster as a big baddie, like because it was just so much fun for him to fight in the shows and the comics, because like in the comics he's like a New Jersey guy and he's kind of a wisecracking sort of guy, but like he'll mimic obviously your fighting style. So if you fight him once, he'll instantly know how to fight you.
Yep.
And then he also obviously uses everybody else's stuff too. And so I don't know, it was just something that I never thought I'd see in a movie. So like when they brought him, I was like, oh yeah, Taskmaster.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I didn't like, you know, like I said, I don't know the comics too well, so I wasn't super familiar with that character. Yeah. But it was really cool to see.
Did you notice, like, maybe this is too in the weeds, but I definitely noticed, like, I was like, that's a Winter Soldier move. Like when he did the knife flip and the elbow, I was like, that's Winter Soldier's move. And he obviously did her like flip, and I'm like, that's hers. And then obviously with the shield and the punching, like that's Cap's. That's Captain America's shit. I'm like,
you know, in the moment I didn't really, but I'm seeing it. Yeah, totally.
It was so much fun. Just like that alone was like, oh fuck yeah, dope. And I love the opening. I thought the opening was like pitch perfect. Just like, you know, them being kids, and then kind of like all of a sudden shit's going down, we're on the run and we're into it, and like you have question marks, and they really built the intrigue well in that opening scene. As far as like things I didn't love about it, I thought that the story was like, could have been a little bit, I don't know. It's kind of tricky when, like you said, Black Widow's character throughout all the other movies, her thing was kind of like the mystery, right? Of like us not really knowing her backstory. And that was kind of intriguing. So it's always tough to be like, well, you know, the thing that you guys didn't know about that was so cool and mysterious, now we're going to tell you, because it's cooler in your head, Nate, and my head and everybody else's head when we imagine it than like one person's idea of what that is. Yeah. So like that's always a little bit tricky. And I thought the opening scene was really well. They did that perfectly, but then it's just sort of like it kind of skipped from opening scene to after she was an Avenger. And it was, you know, it's sort of like I would have liked to spend more time like of her actually like training or going through that stuff, because that it kind of, they play out like how that affects her character and how like she doesn't trust people and whatever, but like yet we still didn't even really get to see much of that.
You know? You're right, and I agree. I guess it would have been nice to see that. I kind of, just by how the film played out, sort of pieced that together in my mind, like what it probably looked like. Just seeing what her sister became and all the other girls that were taken, kind of, I sort of put it together like, oh shit, like that's a really shitty upbringing.
Yeah, and I guess
no wonder she's like so just
yeah. Well, I guess we kind of got that one like flashback in Age of Ultron, right, where like everybody had their flashback, and she had the one where she was in that training school with all the other little girls.
Oh, yep.
It almost looked like a ballet studio. So
yep.
Did you ever see? It was a couple years ago, Red Sparrow with Jennifer Lawrence.
I don't think I have.
She was it was a movie about her being a Soviet spy, and the Soviet Union used to have a program called Red Sparrow where they would bring in, well, sort of whatever, force these beautiful young women to be spies for them and kind of like assassins. So then they would sort of put them out in order to flirt with, whatever, to get involved with other people. And like, that's kind of what that movie's about. So like, I guess that would be a good double feature, but I was kind of like wanting a little bit more of that espionage. But I loved, what was the guy's name? Was it her dad, the red,
red. God dang it. I can't remember.
It was
it was like the basically that nobody knew about.
Yeah, the Soviet Union's version.
He's like
of
super
Captain
bitter about it,
and he's just like, I should have been Captain America. Like, he's like, does anybody ever talk about me?
He was that super soldier from the beginning of the film when she was a kid.
Yep,
helping them escape on the plane and everything. Yeah,
he was fun. Yeah, David Harbour was great.
I like him.
Yeah, I do too. He's great.
Like, so what did you think of the plot itself? Trying to help all the other girls become free from Dragov. I can't remember his name.
Something vaguely Russian. Yeah, I don't know. It was fine. It's sort of like, I don't know. It would have been. I don't know. It's sort of hard when they're like, I sort of hate when movies do that, when they're like, oh, there's actually this big bad guy who's really bad, but you've never heard of him until right now. But don't worry, he's really bad.
And he's just like hiding in the clouds.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, he's just been up there the whole time. But so like just being, I get it. I guess I liked that it was, but I didn't necessarily like that he used like this, mind control stuff. I really liked, it's more interesting like what Black Widow went through, where it wasn't just like a drug that physically controls your whole mind, where it was more like the mind control of like, I guess, just years of abuse and like fucking and like making you paranoid and question everything. Like that's definitely more interesting than just like it's just a light switch and we just need the off button and then everybody's free. So it would be like, here's a pitch that I would have liked to be a little bit more interesting, is if like, let's say Florence Pugh, her sister, is trying to get out, and she's on the run. She's sort of fugitive from the training, whatever facility, and they're after her. And somehow they contact Black Widow because they're family or whatever, and say that she's on the run. Can you help us get her back? She's dangerous, whatever. So Black Widow does it out of her own self-interest for her sister, not actually to help them. And then let's say she finds her sister, and her sister wants to go take the school down, and Black Widow is like a little bit hesitant about that, just like, no, you're free, let's just get out of here. And then she decides, all right, let's take him down. And then when they go to take him down, then we basically through whatever, you can still have a big bad that runs a school, but through whatever circumstances, we find out that Black Widow was actually also instrumental in training these girls and implementing these harsh practices that she also went through. So then Black Widow feels some guilt about it too.
Yeah, a little bit of a dark side.
Yeah, a little bit of a dark side. It feels right. And then she's like, feels guilty and a little bit weird, like about like, yes, I got out and I did some really bad things and I shouldn't have, like, because then you have more stakes and then you have more levels of emotion and then you have family stuff. And then Florence Pugh feels a little bit more betrayed. And then it's more inward instead of just like oh, no, they're all mind controlled and it's a bad guy. And we punch him and we turn the lights off and then everybody's free.
You can't punch him until you can't smell him.
That's right. That's a good point. Yeah.
That was one thing. I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah,
like,
that's stupid.
I liked, like I said, I think it was a good movie. I thought the plot was fine, but that part was like,
yeah, I agree.
Come on.
So, I mean, Marvel, if you want me to rewrite your movies, just let me know. But maybe that's not as appealing. But no, I think like I was surprised at how much I liked it, and really just like from a technical aspect, how well it was done. And I think we mentioned before the pod, chronologically, this movie takes place after Civil War. So like after the big Avengers have their fallout, after they're fighting, then this is kind of smack dab. They make a lot of references to your friends are broken up. And
they make you, they point that out pretty clearly.
Yeah, right? Pretty heavy handedly. Yeah. So like overall, I'm kind of glad I saw it in the theater just for like the spectacle of the big action and the big set pieces and stuff. And that was super fun. But like, I would probably put it as like a lower mid-tier Marvel movie.
Yeah, there's definitely quite a few I enjoyed more. But yeah, I like this one. I thought it was fine.
Here's a question for you. Do you think you would have preferred this as a movie like it was, or would you rather have had them give Black Widow like a series and maybe do a more interesting story?
That's a really good question. I think that if they would have kind of twisted the story, like some of the thoughts you put out there, like given us even some more information about the background and really who is she, then I would have liked a series. I think that would have been a cool way to make a series. But if they would have kept it the way it is, I think the film is the way to go.
Yeah, I think that probably the huge amount of action and spectacle we got was probably only really possible for a movie. I don't know if you could get that throughout a whole series, but you would probably be able to stretch out that story and do more with it that way. So, but that'd be interesting to see.
That's a good question.
We'll think about it.
Did you? I'm sure you saw the end credit scene.
Yes.
Thoughts?
So we're in the same universe as Seinfeld, Marvel and Universe, because of Julia Louis-Dreyfus. So maybe Seinfeld is part of the MCU now. Avengers, coming up. What are we doing here? Why are we avenging? Avenge, not revenge. Yeah, that's what I want. That's the next one I want to see. It's instead of comedians in cars getting coffee, it's Avengers in cars avenging. We'll work on these jokes before it comes out. We'll edit some better ones in. No, I was like, I didn't know if there was going to be an end credit scene. I happened to sit to the end just out of force of habit, and then I was like, oh, okay, cool. So now, Florence Pugh is out going after Hawkeye. That's right. I was trying to think of who was on the picture.
It makes me interested, just from the rumor mill. I think, all right, maybe they're looking at introducing like the bad Avengers. I don't know what the formal name is, but
Oh yeah, probably like the Dark Avengers or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like is she gearing to go with that route and
Mm.
kind of, you know,
Hmm.
not follow in the footsteps of her sister? Like
That
she's
could
sitting there
be.
honoring her memorial and gravesite, and then she gets this bomb dropped on her. Like
Could be. Do
like,
you think
will she
it'll?
ever find out that they were like best friends?
Yeah, probably not until they face each other, because I'm sure Clint would bring that up at some point.
Right.
um, but there's like a Hawkeye series on the slate,
Yeah.
so maybe it'll tie in somehow. Maybe she'll be
And
the bad guy of that series or something.
I don't know. Um, but son of a bitch, if they don't tell me what happened with those two at Budapest in the Hawkeye series, I'm gonna be pissed. I was waiting for it in this
This whole
fucking
time,
movie. Have
that would have been.
this whole universe waiting for them. They reference it all the
Oh,
time. So if I don't get some
man,
answers on Budapest in the Hawkeye series,
man, maybe that would have been a better Black Widow movie if we just saw that. What happened in Budapest?
I need to watch
Hmm.
it.
They could have done. Wow, that's okay. I'll stop pitching stuff. I was gonna say they could have done like a cool thing where it's like you're in Budapest to start, and then it keeps like flashing back to when she was younger in the training, and then flash back to Budapest, and then back and back and back. That would have been fun.
Yeah.
Whatever. Well, speaking of the Hawkeye series, that's on the slate. So now transitioning here into the Marvel series, they've kind of done these mini series. The first one that came out was WandaVision, which was it's even hard to describe, but it's like it's Wanda and Vision, and they have a series, and they're
Yeah. So that's, I think, right after Endgame,
yeah,
I believe.
chronologically, yeah, I believe so.
So Vision's dead. Wanda kind of goes crazy,
Mm-hmm.
goes and like steals them and kind of rebuilds her own world.
Yeah.
Um, but the first one, maybe two episodes, when I watching this, I'm like, I'm not enjoying this. Like, this kind of
Really?
sucks. I didn't realize, what they were trying to do. And then they kind of
Mm-hmm.
finally started dropping some hints that there's some
There's more.
weird juju
There's more
going
going
here.
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like what Nate's referring to, for people who haven't seen it, we'll get into spoilers because who cares? But basically, it starts out with all of a sudden we're in like a 1950s sitcom. It's all black and white, and it's sort of like looks like the Dick Van Dyke Show, and just like no breakaways, no, it's just shot exactly like that. It's on like a sound stage. They're dancing around, and they're like, and you're like, it's basically like a sitcom, as if like Wanda and Vision are who they are, like the Scarlet Witch and Vision, but they're like leading these double lives, trying to be a normal married couple. Like they basically put it into a sitcom. And yeah, the first episode, you're like, whoa, holy shit. Like, what is
Right.
going on?
Yeah, and
So
I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
Forgot a whole bunch of backstory.
That's okay. Just to cue people in. So like, interesting, opposite of you, I was like all in for the
Really?
first. I was just like, I don't know what's going on, and I love it. I was like, this is fucking nuts. Because I was like, well, I don't know what's happening here, but it's a choice. They're going for it,
Yeah.
And I really love the restraint to like to go for it, and the at the risk of alienating fans, and not because they could have opened with a little teaser of like Wanda storming the thing and getting the body and like modern time, and then cut to this, and then people are like, wait, what's going on? But they would be like, well, I guess we saw something, so something, it's going to come back to that at some point. But
Yeah.
I was really impressed with the restraint and the balls to like boom on the table right out the gate. Like they're just going for it with no answers. And that was fun. That was honestly, I love this series. It was so much fun to like for like the mystery aspect of it, of every episode getting a little bit more, and you're kind of like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, I ended up ultimately loving it too, and even my wife even watched it with me, which is like the only Marvel thing she's ever watched with me.
Oh wow!
So that got to tell you something, I guess. And kind of to your point from the beginning of when we started, we were saying how shifting out of the Thanos timeline, kind of totally changing how we're doing things. I thought, even though I didn't love how it really started in this series, I think they did a good job of kind of sticking to their guns in that regard. And hey, we're gonna do it different.
Totally.
So get on board.
Yeah, right. It's like, well, hey, we're here, so you might as well sign up. And so one of the cool parts about it too is that every episode is like sort of based on a different sitcom, like a different sitcom era. So like
that was cool.
So like like 50s, then 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It was just like, wow, this is cool. It's like everyone's changing. So cool. Yeah. So it's like nothing has really been done like that before. And the way they were able to do it, and like just the subtlety, the mystery, and then like you getting, and like you said, the brilliant part for me was like, this wasn't like this huge epic, like the world's gonna end if we don't stop something. It's all internal. It's just like this like domestic thing at the end of it where she just wants to hold on to him. And
just trying so desperately to keep what she created, brings back her love, and then she creates children.
Yeah, that was fucked up. When her brother came back, speak of spoilers, like that was when Quicksilver shows up, and they're like, they recast him. That was great.
Yeah, it started to get, that's like when things start getting weird.
Really trippy, because you're like, wait, he was Quicksilver in X-Men. So like he was Fox's Quicksilver. Yeah. And so like Marvel had a different Quicksilver. So when he showed up, it was just like, what is going on?
That's kind of when you started to realize there's beginning to be cracks in what she's built.
Right.
Like she's not containing it like she used to be. There's mistakes happening, and the people within it are realizing it.
Yes.
Is the crazy part.
Oh, that was the best part. And it was and Agatha. What a great character, Agatha.
All along.
It was Agatha all along. So like everybody, this is a bone I have to pick that I've been waiting to pick since I saw it. So like we all loved Agatha's theme song. It was Agatha all along. And everybody's like, oh, it's such a banger. Oh, this song is so great. But like it's the Munsters theme song. Like they just the Munsters theme song is one of the best theme songs ever. So just everybody's just like, oh, this is so brilliant. They came up with this brand new, oh, it's great. It's like, no, they retooled the Munsters theme song, which is great, but give the Munsters some credit, all right?
That's legitimate bone. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, everybody's like just not giving them credit, and they're like, oh, this is so great. Isn't this so cool? Oh, it's a minute. No. Fuck everybody who thought that. I don't care.
Fuck them.
So that's been, when did that come out? That was what, like, was that?
I think it was around like February, March. It was like late winter, maybe.
Yeah.
Spring.
That was really good. And then, so, well, we both love that. And then that brings us into the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeah. So going into that, what were your expectations going into that one?
I've just am kind of, I have a really biased opinion towards both of those characters. I've never really liked either of them that much in any of the films I've seen. I don't know why. It's just something about it. I don't know.
They just don't do it for you.
They don't do it for me. I tried to give it a fair shake. I didn't love the story. I really don't have a lot of good things to say. There's some good acting. Wyatt Russell, he's great.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of good. Yeah, that's right. I don't have a lot of good things to say about it either. I didn't really like it. Well, it should be noted too that you were never much of like a Cap guy, right?
He was never one of my favorites. I respected him. I liked
Yeah,
him as Captain America,
right. So like
but
these guys being like offshoots of Cap when you're not already like a big Cap necessarily person,
yeah,
I could see why like maybe they
kind of
didn't
a little
always resonate with you.
unbiased.
Yeah.
Um,
So going
I
into
was
it, I thought that it was going to be, I was like excited for it. I thought it was going to be really good because like the Winter Soldier, Captain America, the Winter Soldier is like still one of my favorite Marvel movies. I love the espionage of it and the contained nature. So I thought like, oh, cool. We're going to get like another like longer kind of spy thriller thing with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then, um, yeah, it wasn't that.
yeah, and I guess I did forget to say as far as an expectation, I had a hope, you know, going back to what I had said about Black Widow, is that this is going to be nice. Like we're kind of coming back to real life a little bit, not so outrageous. But it just ended up being them like fighting against a bunch of kids, and I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even finish this series.
Really?
Yeah, I was just like, I'm just kind of done. Like, I thought what I was referring to either, I thought the action that sucked. Like, you can tell the work they put into it, but like, I just was like, these, it did not feel real. It didn't feel visceral. Like, I thought it was shot weird. It was edited weird because it didn't have a good flow. It was all like choppy. And like, I was like, if anything, this series should focus on like the action. This is the series to be like, we're doing action. It's going to be slick. It's going to look cool. Not saying that stuff is easy, but
And
like,
I kind of wonder, we were just talking about if Black Widow should have been a movie or a series. And it's like, they're going to stick to just crazy action the whole time, I don't know, it might be kind of hard to do in a series. I think they just needed some more twists in the story. Some more drama.
Yeah, I agree.
That's my opinion.
I was hoping for more. I don't know. It just, it didn't really do it for me either. I guess I was like just hoping for kind of a sort of a Cold War thriller, a little more espionage stuff going on, and it was just kind of meh, you know.
Yep. I will say the one thing I did like, I thought like I said, Wyatt Russell did a great job. He did such a great job of playing a crap character that I like hated it.
Yeah.
I got so frustrated by the character. He did a really good job.
Right, which is like exactly what he was supposed to do.
Yeah. Like he was getting he's getting like threats on social media, I think.
I know, which is crazy. Like that's, Kurt Russell's son. Kurt Russell's like one of the most likable guys who's ever walked the face of the earth. And yet he's got a son who can just play the most punchable fucking
death threats.
Yeah. Just crazy. Well, you know what? We don't have to talk about that anymore. We can move on. But
it wasn't mine.
No, it wasn't my favorite either. But like, if we're looking forward to Hawkeye, based on this, like, I'm not super excited for Hawkeye. I don't know what Hawkeye is going to be. I don't know what the story is going to be. But just based on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I'm just a little bit less. I'm just sort of like,
yeah. I guess it, with it probably going to end up being somewhat similar. Maybe
we'll see.
Put the caution light up for yourself a little bit, but but we're going to watch it anyway. So
yep, we will. Well, then this now brings us to the most recent one that's come out, Loki.
Probably the most influential one too.
Yes, very highly anticipated. Loki has been, a fan favorite. He's been a huge part of the MCU, and one of like the only really like one of two like really great villains, and sort of became kind of an anti-hero villain, skirts the line of that, but like one of the most beloved characters in the whole MCU by basically everybody, and him getting his own series. Honestly, I was nervous about it going in. I was like, are they gonna like fuck this up? And is this gonna be like don't know. It's just tough because you're like, can Loki lead his own thing? Is he better as just like a foil? Like we've always seen him, and is this gonna? I don't know if I'm gonna like it, and so I don't know. I was a little bit hesitant going into it, but what were your thoughts going?
Well, going into it, I was very excited. I had high hopes for this series. I think maybe largely because I like the Thor movies. I think he's a fun character. I liked their interaction together, especially like in the back half of their films.
Yeah, it definitely did a good
job
interacting. Getting better. Yeah,
I was pretty excited, pretty interested to see what this show brought. I guess I don't want to get carried away into the spoilers, so I'll let you start.
Well, do you think it lived up to your expectations?
I think it mostly did. There's definitely some stuff that I didn't like, and I'm curious to see what your opinions are because you might have a different one than me on some of these things. I was wondering how they were going to play this out. So it's the Loki from 2011, the Battle of New York.
Yeah.
It's not the most recent Loki because he's dead, right?
Right.
And it kind of seemed like when they first brought him in, he just felt like more of the more recent Loki to me than the 2011 Loki.
Yeah.
I didn't think that the transition was as good as it could have been to make him feel more villainous and angry.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
That's a fair point. Yeah, I hadn't really considered that, but you're right. He had definitely, it seemed like he had kind of his self-reflection and his growth had kind of been there when we've seen that as audience members over years. But yeah, at the time, technically, chronologically speaking,
that's not what he's supposed to be.
Right. He was just sort of mustache twirling at that point. Yeah.
And they show him all of what happens in his next few years and everything. Yeah. I don't know. The start was a little bit rough for me. What did you think?
I loved it.
Yeah, see, thought we might disagree.
I love the whole thing, and it was again just probably because my expectations weren't super high. I was sort of a little bit nervous about it. So like them just like really going for it. I had not really considered what you're bringing up, but that is a really good point though. Because he picks up the Tesseract from Endgame and then goes into the thing and then
causes the
which honestly, right. I honestly love that whole side thing of like this weird little like sect of agency that controls like Nexus events of the timeline that gets skirted off and they have to go like make it better. Like that was a really high concept thing, and I really appreciated that. Like it was interesting to like let's throw Loki into that. It almost feels like it's a little bit too much going on, but somehow it worked for me.
I think it kind of makes sense. Like the God of Mischief getting thrown into the time variance authority, the people that keep track of everything that's happening ever. Let's throw in the worst possible person.
Right. Yeah, he's the one we want. Yeah. No, totally. And I really like the ambition of it. And again, it was a good mystery throughout. You were kind of like that kind of led you through it. And I thought like, oh, this is going to be one of those things where like, we're trying to figure out, like, I thought it was going to be like a time loop deal where like, it's where basically as the story progresses, he switches and then he is, when they're like, you're the one who's been killing all these guards. I thought it was going to get to the point where we would see him become that person and then fulfill that prophecy. Yeah, right. And so I was like, okay, this will be interesting. And then when it took a different turn, and honestly, I think I was like, okay, interesting.
I have one more complaint. It happened in the first episode, and it's a pretty big one. And I thought maybe we should get to it since it was early on in the series. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I think it's the very first episode, and Loki trying to figure out what the fuck's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And this is after he had I think he escaped, but he's still in the TVA area. And he walked into that room with all the analysts and stuff, and he starts talking to that kind of quirky guy that you only saw in the first episode.
Yeah.
Opens that drawer full of Infinity Stones, and Loki's in shock, like, oh my gosh, there's Infinity Stones everywhere. And the other dude's like, well, we use these as paperweights around here.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off. And because, we talk about taking the Marvel Universe to a whole new direction. And I think, and I said, it's going to be some growing pains. And that one was a pretty big pain because they spent this whole over a decade building up to the use of the Infinity Stones and the Gauntlet, and Iron Man dies, Cap gets written off because of this whole thing, and they're just like, that's no fucking deal. It hurt. I'm a sentimental person a little bit, so I'm just like, you assholes.
You're like, this is a middle finger, right? Like, you cared about these movies? Oh, you spend most of your life? Well, fuck you.
We were just talking about this. We spent all our money, our childhood. We kind of grew up liking this stuff, and they're just stomped all over it. I'm sure that's not like what they meant by it. That's how I took it. I didn't like it
as a personal offense.
Yeah. Did you notice that at all? Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah. I thought that. I mean, it didn't hurt me. I was like, all right. Like, all right. But I was sort of trying to think of like how, I guess I was kind of like, okay, but how are these meaningless here? Because I thought like for sure, like the time stone, like there is a time stone. So for these guys controlling time, right? Isn't one of them the time one? The green one?
The green is the time stone.
Yeah. I guess that was where my mind went, was I was like, okay, whatever about these other ones. But I was like, if any of these would be useful to you guys, it would be the time one, right?
Well, like they don't need it because they have their little tempad. They just go to whatever time in history they need to go to.
Yeah, I guess you're right. They wouldn't need it. Yeah. So they're like, we don't care.
Just a bunch of bullshit to them.
Yeah, they're like, well, you fucking nerds like this shit? Well, fuck you. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I had to get that out of the way. I had to bring it up.
Do you feel better now?
I don't know. Not really.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like Owen Wilson is so good. He almost steals it too. Oh, it was so much fun. And the chemistry between him and Tom Hiddleston. And it's also fun because like Tom Hiddleston does a bunch of impressions of people.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he has always done impressions of like Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth. and one of the impressions he always does is Owen Wilson, or he's done for years. So like just like seeing them together in something in Loki with Owen Wilson across from him, like for me was like, oh, this is so cool. Like he's imitated you for so many years. And Owen Wilson was great. Like I everybody likes Owen Wilson, I think, but just like he looked like he was having a blast, and his character was so much fun.
It was awesome. When I guess spoilers, they zap him with the death stick thing. I'm like, oh no, it's like he's legitimately gone. Like I was bummed. Like I was bummed because there was like 1 or 2 episodes left after that.
I was like, talk about the balls. That hurt. That one hurt when he was gone. And then Loki, that was the same episode. They fucking glow stick Loki, that same one. I was like, damn, because I was like, I guess this is the most recent one, so we are going to go into spoilers, which we already kind of have, which we said we were going to.
We're gonna have to, because
we're gonna have to.
This series had such a huge influence on what's going to happen
right.
in this phase of Marvel.
So at this point, like we've said a couple things, but like we're going to get really deep into it. So if you haven't seen Loki and you want to, go see it, and then you can listen to the rest of this. But okay, go ahead.
Oh God, you have to cut this part out. Where did we leave off?
So that was the episode where Owen Wilson got glow sticked, and then also Loki got glow sticked.
Okay,
and...
so we shouldn't gloss over. This is when we saw the timekeepers, the 3 timekeepers.
Yes.
And I think everyone probably had a pretty good hunch all along, but we come to confirm they're not actually real. They're just robots or androids or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Then get this big cliffhanger, like, well, who the fuck's in charge here? And then bam, Loki's gone.
Yep.
Oh shit.
We
haven't even talked about Sylvie yet.
No, we haven't. Yeah, I guess Sylvie's great.
Sylvie's cool as shit.
Sylvie is so cool. We all fell in love with Sylvie. And one of my favorite parts, so like basically I guess to cue people in, we're saying spoilers, so like it's weird that we're also telling you what the show's about. But whatever. So basically Loki he creates a Nexus time loop. They bring him in because they're it doesn't matter. Well, then like they decide that they want his help because someone is going around killing these people's workers that are the guards that are whatever, and their wounds are consistent with him, and we find out one of his variants. So they're like, we're going to recruit Loki to help us find this other like Loki, and so they're bringing Loki along. As we go, Loki ends up finding who the Loki variant is, and it's a variant of him. It's a Loki from another universe, from another timeline. And in that timeline, Loki is a girl, and she doesn't want to go by Loki. She wants to go by Sylvie, so she's called Sylvie, and she's awesome. She fucking rocks, yeah. And
I'm guessing, I don't know if they ever said, but I'm guessing her Nexus event was because she was a girl.
Yeah, see, I think that must be it too, but I don't know, because the flashback we saw was just her as a kid just playing with toys,
no, you're done. Weren't supposed to do that.
Wow, that's rough. I'd be pissed too. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it was probably that she was born a girl. I mean, they never said, but and she wanted to know, but she never got that answer.
And the whole thing with her, she hides in apocalyptic events. That's why they can't find her. She doesn't leave a Nexus event behind because nothing happens afterward.
Which was like, that was a tough buy. Like for the audience, for them, like I was like, this is gonna be tough to make us all buy into it, and I totally did. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because that's what I said at first, like, oh, that makes sense. And then I thought about it, and I was like, does it make sense? And then I kept thinking, I'm like,
it at all.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
I was like, okay. And then I was like, wait, but does it make sense though? Because I was like, theoretically, depending on what the apocalypse is, you could like presumably accidentally prevent it from happening, depending on what it was. So like when they go to the planet, when they were like, we could get on this ship and prevent it from happening, that didn't happen, but they could have gotten on that ship and stopped it from blowing up, and then it wouldn't have been, and then all of a sudden it wouldn't have been an apocalypse, like if it was like, I don't even know if I want to use this example, but let's say like 9/11, right? Everybody's favorite tragedy. So like, let's say I shouldn't even say this, but here we go. Like let's say they went to New York in 2001, and they got on the planes and they stopped the planes from going to the towers. If you counted that as an apocalypse, then it's like, well, then it didn't happen. So then it wasn't an apocalypse. So then it would create a next event, So like in my head, I was like, well, I guess theoretically you could potentially, like if it was a bomb that was going to go off and that was the apocalypse, if you went and accidentally like you showed up and then all of a sudden the bomb, because of something you did, it shorted the bomb out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So, and not to get too sidetracked off where we're headed, but I think the whole idea behind it is like, she's just hiding. She's just trying to stay away from them, not necessarily like making things happen in that in that timeline or event, whatever you want to call it.
Have you ever seen The Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher?
I have. I don't remember very well.
I don't know. It's probably not that good, but I always liked it. But that was like a lot of time travel stuff. And it was like every time he went back, just the fact that he went back in time, it changed something. That's what the butterfly effect is. Like one little change causes whatever. But they gloss over it, and it's easier if you're just like, you know what? It checks out on first go. You're like, you know what? Yep, apocalypse, they can hide there. Boom, let's keep going.
We kind of went off on a tangent there for
sorry. But with Sylvie, so back to Sylvie, I loved when Loki started to fall for her. And in my head, I'm like, of course you would fall for her because she's you. Because you're selfish and you love yourself, you know. But the more they got into it and the more they like acknowledged that and played into it, I was like, this is fucking perfect.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I was like, do I like this? Yeah, yes.
Yeah, because you're like, are they forcing this? Like, is this not good? But then, you're like, you know what?
I mean, they were forcing it. Like they were like, we want you to like this. You know, the way we're presenting it to you, like it, please. I think they did a good job.
And we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. So they accomplished that. So, I guess like that was a great moment of television when they get, I forget what they call it, but they get glow sticked and vaporized. And it was like, when they did that to Owen, because it was like Owen Wilson's like,
pruned. Sorry, it's pruned.
Pruned. There we go. Thank you. Good call. So Owen Wilson gets pruned. That was right after he's like, all right, Loki, I believe you. Let's take these guys down. And all he ever wanted, because they find out that they were all variants. They weren't created by the timekeepers. So they were like, they had lives before they could have been living. And he just always daydreamed about having a jet ski. He thought like, it's just such a cool thing. Like always thought jet skis were so cool. And then he's like, I believe you, Loki. Let's take these fuckers down. And then they kill him. And he's like, maybe in my life I could have owned a jet ski. And then he's fucking gone. And that hurt. And then like later on they get to the timekeepers. And I was so glad when the timekeepers was just a robot. I'm like, cool. Because I'm like, good. I'm glad it wasn't just like what we see here, because that would be dumb. So I'm glad
they looked so horribly.
They looked so bad. Yeah.
It's like I don't know if they tried to make them look fake or it was just like horrible.
Yeah, I don't know either. Because I had the same thought. I was like, wow, these guys look fucking awful. And then when they were robots, I'm like, well, I guess that works.
Like Marvel, you got all the money in the world. They make it look.
Yeah, you could do a little bit better, but I guess it worked out if they're fake. That it works that they were shitty looking. And then fucking Loki gets vaporized too. And then you're like, shit. And then I thought like, and then it's the end of the episode. So like your pretty much two lead characters and two like, it was just like they're gone. And in my head I was like, is Marvel really like gonna go ahead as Loki? The series Loki is actually going to be about Sylvie going forward. Like, is she the actual Loki now? You know? And I was like, that's a pretty big step for Marvel to take.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if people are gonna be on board for that. I was like, I don't think I'm on board for that. And I like Sylvie, you know. And then sure enough, they're not actually like dead instantly. They get transported, and then it's gonna
pretty much go to purgatory, essentially.
Right. And like a death cloud is gonna eat them at some point.
So
and then
he wakes up after he gets pruned, and he's surrounded by a bunch of Lokis,
which is so good.
You know what I thought was really cool is that they play it off. So like the only people that can survive in here are
Lokis.
Lokis. Yeah, like you're just mischievous people.
I love that too.
Find a way to survive.
Yep.
I thought that was great.
I did too.
Like a planet or a whatever space full of his Lokis.
Yep. And it's like, of course, all these Lokis cause some kind of time variance at some point. Obviously, it's probably inevitable. And then obviously they all got like pruned at some point, because obviously. And then like, it makes sense that I'm sure they fucking backstabbed everybody that was in there.
Yeah. I loved it.
And I love when, they go to the hideout and then all the other Lokis find it. And then
it's like two different gangs of Loki.
Oh, it was so good. And then they all like want power. And so then,
of course,
like, you're like, oh, that's what little did you know. And they're all like, oh, so good.
Hey, right before they got to that little hangout area, they were like kind of doing the elevator thing down through the ground and everything.
Yeah.
The camera shot.
Yeah.
There's also like Easter egg in there. Did you notice it? There's like a tiny little guy that you could hear a scream.
Oh, I don't think I did.
You have to go back and look at it. I had to look it up afterwards. They threw in it was a little mini Thor. I don't remember what his actual name is. It was like a frog Thor. It was a throwback to a comic way back when. It was a kind of a cool little thing. I saw this little guy. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I looked it up afterwards. Anyway,
that's cool.
Not to get off topic. I thought it was interesting.
Maybe that was, yeah. So speaking of amphibians / reptiles, the alligator Loki was so cool.
That was interesting.
I loved it. I was like, now we're cooking. Now that's a variant there. I loved it. Because there's like, he growls, and then only one of the Lokis like claims to know what he's saying. So you're like, is this just an alligator? And then
Go ahead.
Just when Owen Wilson was there later, and they're like, oh, he says this, and that's alligator for this, and Owen was like, he could be lying about all this. And he's like, well, if he was lying, that would make him even more like a Loki.
That was a great line.
It was perfect.
I really like that show. So where are we?
So then I guess like so Sylvie also prunes herself so that because she finds out about the place, she gets transported there, teams up again with Owen Wilson and our dearly beloved Loki, and then they team up to enchant the death cloud, basically, so that they can get through to the person who's actually in charge of this whole thing. And they run into the one called the He Who Remains, right?
Yep.
And he's basically the Wizard of Oz. He's the man behind the curtain. And what was his backstory, that he's from one of the multiverses.
He's from, I don't know whatever universe it is specifically, but 31st century Earth. He's human. Do you know like who it actually is, who they're referencing?
That kind of stuff gets a little bit muddled because like technically Marvel and DC like have like this weird structure where they technically have like one entity that's like the most powerful one, and it's basically just God as a comic book character. And so like I don't know if that's what that is, but I don't think so. But like I'm sure there's some comics for it, but some of those really ethereal ones, like there's a lot of them. So I don't really know.
Well, it's Kang, right? Kang the Conqueror is.
He's Kang?
He's Kang.
Oh shit. I didn't know that.
He's the good variant of Kang.
Oh,
so they're having, when they all get into his castle, and Loki, Sylvie are like confronting him, and Loki kind of starts to believe what he's saying. He's like, hey, wait, time out, Sylvie. Yeah. Like, let's maybe not kill him right now. Let's hear him out. Yeah, he's saying like, if you can kill me if you want to, but if you do it, like, there's very, very bad versions of me that will probably come through.
He's Kang the Conqueror.
Kang the Conqueror.
Dude, I know Kang the Conqueror. Well, that explains why he's wearing purple, I guess.
Yeah, that's him.
Interesting.
I'm almost certain. I mean, we should probably confirm that. But
I'm
pretty certain that it is him.
Interesting. Well, we'll look that up later. Interesting. That would be very interesting. I guess we don't really know at this point.
I don't think they've like legitimately.
But that's your theory?
In a series or a show said that's who he is, but like he's cast into other movies. Like that's what he's gonna be, is Kang, that actor.
play. Yeah, Screen Rant says MCU's He Who Remains is actually a variant of the multiversal villain Kang the Conqueror.
And that's Kang's story is like he's 31st century Earth,
Yeah.
I think.
Fucking...
Or well, there's different versions of it. But...
Yeah, I love Kang the Conqueror.
I think his character seems really cool, but that's one more beef I have with the series too. It's like
okay,
like this.
Well, while we're here, let's get into it.
You've just got, it's another villain, right?
Yeah.
I don't know Kang's whole backstory. I know he's very good as far as like the universe and traveling and all that weird stuff.
He's not Thanos, but he's
he's not like a Thanos fighter.
Right.
But he has other attributes that make him that powerful in other ways, right? Like he's gonna be the next Thanos in this next phase of Marvel. That's kind of the game plan, probably.
Yeah.
But like to make him basically God, like you said, like he just that version of him just figured out how to control everything of all time.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
I guess that's why I just didn't think it was Kang, because I'm like, that doesn't really, but yeah, that's an odd choice that I guess he just kind of stumbled into that.
That was bizarre. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that I'm a little bit shook right now. I didn't realize that. I thought he was just
man, that's where they're headed with it.
Well, I guess we'll get into this later, but that makes sense because on the slate I saw Secret Invasion is on the slate, which that is Kang the Conqueror's whole thing is the Secret Invasion. That's like that's always his big storyline in the comics, is basically like he is Kang the Conqueror. He's going to come down and then it's like the Skree. I think it's the Skree invasion. It's the Skree and the Krulls or something. Who knows? Some kind of names like that. But they go in and they basically imitate, like they'll make duplicate like clones of people existing and then they slowly take over. It was basically
like the beings in like Captain Marvel, right?
Yes, that's exactly what those were. Yeah, so that's Kang the Conqueror's thing, is he uses that to those people or whatever to invade, and then it's basically like it was basically that storyline originated in the 70s, I think, in the 80s. I think it was the 80s, and it was like everybody's Red Scare, their fear of communism slowly invading the country. So that's like that was the comic book version of it, or like these invaders are going to come in and slowly infiltrate your society. Yeah,
story.
Yeah. So, but okay, well that makes a lot of sense, and for the Secret Invasion at least being on the list, that's interesting. But as far as like Loki, I told you I was gonna, before we started recording, I told you there's one thing I was gonna bring up that I guaranteed no one else has brought up, and that no one else will ever bring up, and probably nobody else thought of, other than the production design. I loved the design of the shirts for the workers, the collars of their shirts. This, nobody gives a shit about this, but like, you know what an Oxford collar is on a dress shirt? Basically means the corners of it button down, right? So like the collar, normally like the seams end here. They didn't end there. They like kept going all the way across here. Like the collar like was into the shirt. So they had buttons here that formed the collar. So then the tie happened, but then the collars kept going and it was like part of the shirt. And I was like, whoa, that is so cool. Because then like when you're doing the tie, you just unbutton it and then it goes around, but the whole like flap is like part of the, blew my mind.
You know what? That's really impressive. You're right, because I didn't put a single thought or glance into it.
I guarantee nobody else did, except for the designer who made that shirt for the shows. That's the only person who thought.
You should like find that person in the credits. And,
I should
like
offer him an
message
interview.
them. Get him on the pod.
Oh my god, I should.
That would be
like, I'm the only one who noticed this. Please, I'm giving you an opportunity. I should. Oh, I loved it. But like those little touches, that was, so what I was gonna bring up was like those little touches, like really what made me love Loki was there was so much like intricate design and everything. the set pieces were great, and like the CGI was good, but just like that production design of like it had kind of the original trilogy Star Wars feel, in the fact that they took like sort of 80s technology and tried to make it seem futuristic. So it was like a mix of like analog and newer stuff. So cool. And it just
all this analog
yeah
technology is controlling the whole flow.
Exactly. They never updated any of it. It's just still that. Yeah, that's just great.
Totally.
I loved it. And it just makes it feel more tactile. You know, it's not like sleek. It's not like Tony Stark's, you know, like light up displays. It's just like it makes you feel like you're there and you can touch it, you know, and it just puts you more in the universe, you know.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And now that I think of it, I just thought of this kind of odd that like that's what they used, given that the person running the whole thing is from the 31st century.
Yeah,
so funny.
That's a great point.
Yeah. I like you said, I loved it. That was a good touch.
Yeah. So overall, Loki was fucking super fun. I guess we don't need to talk about all the variants of Lokis, but the old Loki, I loved.
That was sweet.
He was cool.
I really appreciate, like, I really liked how he was explaining how he became to be old. Like that whole conversation, like the Loki we know is like, you know, how are you this old? Like, didn't you didn't die from Thanos? And they're all it's kind of neat because they're all like understanding what they're
kind of like piecing it together, and they're like, like,
we've all lived the same lives, you know?
Yeah.
And just to hear him talk about how he relied more on magic, you know, and his sorcery. That's cool. And then to see how that was used in later in the episode.
You're like, damn.
That was sweet.
And it was cool how he was kind of like, he was a different Loki in the fact that he was like, he just sort of fucked off and was like, kind of was just like sick of it. You know, he sort of was in on the cosmic joke. It was kind of like, had this existential crisis and was kind of like, nothing really matters. So he just kind of went off and like, it was that's like a good culmination of like the whole show. Like that was like what I wanted out of like a Marvel series, you know, was like, take fucking chances. And like, they're not all gonna like necessarily work out, but I really appreciate they really went for it, you know. And it wasn't just like, all right, we're on Asgard and like Loki's like a young something and he's getting into trouble with Thor, you know, like they could have easily just done that, but instead they took a big chance and a big swing. And now we're kind of like, when we start talking about Kang, it's like, where do we go from here? What is the universe now, you know?
Yeah. And you know, with how things are looking moving forward, like given like who Kang is going to end up being, like, and how powerful he is, kind of going back to some of the growing pains, you know, I talked about leaving the whole Thanos thing behind, is like, well, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like, that's not happening anymore, you know. That all ended, and it's just a whole new set of problems to deal with. And I don't know, I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to like give up what you watched, but it's neat to see where it's headed.
Yeah. And I think I have a feeling that Doctor Strange is going to have a big part to play, because isn't his movie called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness?
Yeah, it's the Multiverse of Madness. That movie is going to be batshit crazy.
Right. So
I think
with all these timelines being severed, it makes sense that maybe he comes in to try and
I think Wanda is supposed to be a big piece in that movie.
Oh, interesting.
Have you seen any of them? I've seen like memes on social media of it'd be like 3 people in a picture, one like disgust with their head down, and then 2 people kind of fucking off. So it's like Doctor Strange in the middle, and then Sylvie and Wanda like all fucking off. It's like, oh god, here I gotta go fix all your assholes' problems.
Oh man, that's good.
That's pretty funny.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna point to like to what we have coming up. So do you have any final thoughts on Loki?
No, I thought it was a good series. just a couple of things, dating back to how it kind of downgraded what was happening in the original
fair points
universe. But
I just wrote, loved it. Yeah, I did too. I just wrote a couple down that I saw on the list of coming out for Disney Plus. So there was like the Hawkeye series that was just scheduled for late 2021. The What If series, which was like an animated What If thing.
I don't know much about that. Yeah.
I just read a little bit about it. It says it's animated, so they're cartoons, but it's just a bunch of like the What If comics are just like basically alternate universe things. So it's like, just like weird one-off stories like, yeah, what if this happened? Like,
yeah,
whatever. Lots of different things. Like, this isn't Marvel, but like I always think of a what if comic as Superman Red Dawn. It's basically like, what if Superman landed in Soviet Russia and grew up in Russia and like fought for the Soviet Union instead of America, and it's just so like, but that's obviously not Marvel, but it's like stuff like that. It's kind of like the what if. And then for 2022, what I saw that was slated was She-Hulk, which is obviously She-Hulk and a lawyer, and I think they have her cast. I didn't write down who plays her. And then Moon Knight is on the schedule, which would be really interesting. And Oscar Isaac, I think, signed on to do that. And then they also have Secret Invasion. That's all to be determined and going forward from there. So we got some stuff coming here. Moon Knight will be interesting. Moon Knight is a really interesting, weird character.
I don't know anything about that one.
Moon Knight is like sort of Marvel's like version of Batman in the fact that he's a guy who's like skulks around at night and has a cape and tries to do his own thing, except that he wears all white instead of black, and his cape, when it fans out, shows like a crescent moon, and he says he wears white because he wants criminals to see him coming. And he's a fucking psychopath though. He's fucked up in a good way. Like, he's fun, but just a psycho. So that'll be interesting to see how they do that. I was thinking, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I was going to say, if you could pick like a Marvel story you would want to see as a series.
Like a character, or what do you mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So you are putting me on the spot.
I am. I said I wasn't, and then here we are. I did it.
Well, I feel like this isn't a super out there answer, but just with how things are headed, I want to know everything going on with Strange. Like, he's gonna have to rebuild everything.
Yeah, he's gonna have a huge part to play.
I'm really curious to see what's going on with that guy.
All right, I'll get nostalgic for just a second, but I loved, like, it was like talking about like putting so many years of our lives into this. Like, in 2016, when I went to see Doctor Strange in the theater and Black Panther in the theater, like, I was just like, that was like a real out-of-body experience for me. No pun intended. Doctor Strange, astral project. Anyway, because like as a kid, those were two of my favorite superheroes in comics. I loved Doctor Strange and I loved Black Panther, and they were just like ones that I never thought I would see on the big screen. You just don't think, like, especially Doctor Strange is like, there won't ever be a Doctor Strange movie,
right?
Yeah. And so like just seeing those on the big screen was like really like wow. Like, my favorite comic book that I still own, I still have some comics from when I was a kid. Shout out my old neighbor Cody Frito, gave me this whole big stack of Spider-Man comics because, like, whatever, he was a couple years older than me, and I was hanging out at his house, and I was like, oh, my parents would never buy me comics even though I wanted them so bad, and I'm like, he's got all these. I was like, oh, these are so cool. And he's like, do you want them? It's like, really? He's like, yeah, take them. So he gave me this huge stack of Spider-Man comics. I still have them. But
Nice.
But my favorite one, it was like a 500th issue of Spider-Man. And it was basically like this huge attack happens on Times Square, and Spidey has to go and try and help, and all these superheroes are getting killed, and it's this huge massacre. And basically, Doctor Strange is fighting what's his name? The guy that starts with an M, who was his friend in the movie. Yeah, that's his main. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. We all know who that is. They were fighting, and then like Spider-Man goes to try and help, and then Doctor Strange and Spider-Man fall into like another, like a different portal or whatever. And so basically, Peter's like stuck in the past, and he has to like make his way back to the present. And by doing that, he has to refight each one of his main villains for the first time again. So he has to like go back in time to like the first time he fought the Lizard, and has to remember how he beat him. And then like, the first time fighting Sandman and Kingpin. And it's like following Doctor Strange through all these different, and at one point he goes in the future and sees his own death and stuff like that. But it was just like, that was the comic that got me into Doctor Strange. I thought that was so cool. And so from then I like went down a little bit of the rabbit hole of Doctor Strange, but
you got the whole backstory, everything.
A little bit, yeah. But like, so I always like Doctor Strange because it's just cool and trippy, and you can do like a bunch of different shit with it. But if I had to pick one, this is going to be a little bit of a nerdy pick, so stay with me. But maybe my favorite like one-off comic is called The Sentry, Sentry. And basically, I would love to see this as a Disney Plus series now, especially with what they're doing, because like it could be self-contained, it could be its own thing, and it didn't have to affect anything else that they were doing. But basically, it's this guy. It starts with this guy who's like middle-aged, and he kind of like, he wakes up one day, and he starts to like think and remember, like, I think I was like a superhero once. And you're like, what? And then he just yeah, right, me too. And then he just kind of like flies off, and then he's going around, and like nobody remembers him, nobody knows who he is, and he slowly is starting to remember this stuff. And like all these, like he's starting to remember, like he was super powerful, and he was like, basically, he goes on to remember that he was the first Marvel superhero ever. And like he had this main villain adversary called the Void, which was like this dark character, and he would always be fighting him and whatever. And he was like best friends with Mr. Fantastic and the Fantastic Four, and like he was also like best friends with the Hulk, not Bruce Banner, but like the Hulk respected him because he was so powerful, because they could fight each other like one-on-one and stuff. And like, so he was friends with the Hulk, and like, all this stuff. And he starts remembering this, and no one really remembers him. And you're like, what is this story? And he, slowly like starts to remember that he was this big deal. And he's like, what happened? Like what could have possibly happened? And then like, as he's remembering this, like the Void is like starting to come back, and is starting to like tear shit down. So he's like, I need to like get the word out and warn people this is happening. And there's just like really cool, like it's really cool artwork by Paul Jenkins. He has a very unique style. But then like there's just like cool pieces written in there, like where this, like as people start to remember who he was, like this kid is like, sees the poster of the Sentry on his wall that has been there for years, but he just thinks like, like he notices again, he's like, have I just not looked at this wall for years? Like it's just so interesting that it was on his wall, but like everybody had forgotten about him. And then you find out that, so what you find out is that the Sentry was the first Marvel superhero, and was basically like Superman, but Marvel's Superman essentially. Yep. And was just like very powerful and whatever. And he had this villain, the Void, that only he could beat, and they would fight each other all the time. Well, what you come to find out was actually the Void was actually also himself. It was like a part of himself. So he was always fighting himself. So no one could ever beat the Void because it was him. That's how powerful he was. And so what they did to defeat the Void was Mr. Fantastic and Doctor Strange got together and basically cast a spell on the whole world, including themselves, including the Sentry, to forget that the Sentry ever existed so that the Void would also go away. So that's basically what happened. And he just became like a normal, like middle-aged dude and forgot. But then because he was so powerful, he started to remember on his own. And then the more he remembered, the more powerful he got. And then it started again. And it was just like, I love that comic so much. And it's so self-contained. It's got this, it's got a great mystery. And it's just like, it would be cool because like it could matter and not matter at the same time. Like you could do the whole thing. And then at the end of it, everybody forgets it again. And so it's like he never existed in the first place. And we can all just go on with our lives.
That's cool.
Right?
That's really cool.
Right?
Yeah, you're onto something there.
That's like, because I thought like, years ago, I was like, I would always love to see like a Sentry, like, thing. But like, I was like, it'll never happen. But now with Disney Plus, you could totally do it. And it's just like a one-off thing and it doesn't have to matter,
That's a very good choice.
I should go pitch that.
I'm sold.
Well, yeah, we'd watch it. Put it up there.
Yeah, put it there and I'll watch it.
The only bad thing about the Sentry is just like Marvel never really knew what to do with him. They tried to incorporate him into like their normal stuff later. So there was like, I think he was part of the Dark Avengers at one point, and like Thor killed him at one time because like I think Norman Osborn, like, whatever, took control of his mind, and then Thor used his power and all the power of the All-Father or whatever and beat him or something, and, whatever. And then, like, there was a time where the Sentry put himself in prison on the moon. There was, like, this big supervillain prison. He put himself there because he didn't want to get out because he didn't want the Void or whatever. And then there's a big prison breakout, and the Sentry was the one who like rounded them all back up. Those are later things that the Sentry did. He hasn't done a lot, but it was always like no one really knew what to do with him. He kind of only works in that like contained story. It is sort of almost like a what if. It's just kind of like a one thing, and they've tried to use him and it just never really works. It's just always kind of like, but honestly, that's a good recommendation, guys. If you want to read it,
I'm intrigued.
You should.
All right, I'll go check him up. I'll go check up on him and see what that's all about. That's a good sell. I like that.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if we're gonna get any better than that, so we could probably end it here. But loyal listeners, I think we should do this every 6 months or every year. Just keep checking in on the MCU.
They got a lot of content pumping out all the time, especially now with the series. So it's pretty interesting to see how things continue to progress. These next 12 months are going to be nuts, just with the multiverse.
Yeah,
it's gonna be so hard to keep track of what's going on. Like start taking go to the movie theater with a notepad.
I know
what's going on here
for real. Well, hopefully, loyal listeners, we can do that so you guys don't have to. We'll try to keep track of it all, and then you can tune in here. So thank you, Nate, for coming on the show. This was a blast. You did a great job. I think I can speak for everybody.
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Had the nerves going into it first time, kind of settled in a little bit, hit our groove. So.
Well, you did great. You never sweat once. But loyal listeners, as always, you can find me on Twitter at LukeLarson89. Find this podcast at L Squared Podcast on Twitter and on Instagram at L2 Podcast on Facebook. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube. Give us a follow. Give us a review if you want, if you feel like it. And as always, you can find me on Twitter at LukeLarson89. Check us out. Hit us up. Let us know what you think of Disney Plus and Marvel's new slate and what you're excited about. And until next time.